So modern ethics, as most of us have come to know it, consists of opposing views and justification between those who quantify good actions and bad actions with those who uphold an immeasurable inherent quality of what the right action is in the context of community. Regardless how you approach your moral choice, the same question always remains. What is the right thing to do? But that limited question has not always guided ethics historically. There is another question, first raised by Plato and then written down for posterity by Aristotle. A question that begins with reflection on not what am I supposed to do or how am I supposed to act, but what kind of person do I want to be? So rather than thinking about how should I act, what should I do, we're thinking now, what kind of person do I want to be? And this is referred to as virtue ethics. Now, what is so unique about virtue ethics is that it frees us from following ethical rules and principles that dictate our actions. In virtue ethics, rather than focus on what people should do or how they must act, it examines what people should be. And this is where my sermon dissolves really into a work of progress. Because I really don't know. I'm trying to understand this. I'm trying to try it on for size. I'm drawn to virtue ethics, but wonder about its viability and effectiveness. But still, it holds a certain appeal. The difference in ethical thinking between what should I do and who do I want to be poses more than just a nuanced or semantic difference. If, while lying on my deathbed, reviewing my life's history, I think I would be more inclined to evaluate if I succeeded in becoming the person I wanted to be, more than looking over the choices of my actions. Being the person I want to be naturally influences my actions, but they are motivated by my character. They're motivated by who I want to be, not the rules and the justification that I must follow. Plato subscribed to 4 key virtues: wisdom, courage, temperance, and justice. Aristotle agreed and added philosophically that when people acquire good habits of character, they are better able to regulate their emotions and reason. This helps them reach morally correct decisions when faced with difficult choices. So again, using Dick Cheney as an example, would virtues that these days include honesty, compassion, generosity, integrity, and fairness, with Cheney's emphasis on cultivating virtues to shape his character, have led him to a different decision about torturing prisoners? I think it may have. I wonder what your thoughts would be on that. If Cheney had concentrated more on the person that he'd want to be, rather on justifying the actions. Virtue ethics runs very closely to the disciplines of Buddhism, which concentrate on the kind of person one wants to be. The primary focus there is on self-development, a perfection of character. Virtues, whether in Aristotle's day or modern day Zen, or for mainline Protestants or atheists, virtues are developed through practice. Just like learning the violin or running a marathon, developing virtue as part of one's character, like the capacity to be fair, courageous, just, compassionate, involves practicing self-discipline. virtues are habits. Once they are acquired, they become the characteristic of a person. And in order to acquire them, you need to become more fully awake so you can work on becoming who you want to be. If generosity is a virtue, you want to kind of to claim or to acquire, then you can only acquire the characteristic of a generous being by practicing generosity. Again, virtues are habits. Once they are acquired, they become a part of the very characteristic of a person. Now, global warming represents an interesting example. Currently, the moral issues surrounding the environment are framed in the language of duties, obligations, and rights. We argue about moral obligation to the natural world and the rights of natural objects. Regardless of your moral justification for being a good steward of the earth, you're still bound by obligations and duties. For example, we have a duty to future generations, therefore we must act thusly. Or we are obligated by a social contract with the natural world to, and therefore we must act thusly. We are instructed how we ought to act by moral justifications. There is no reference to my asking, what kind of person do I want to be? I am instructed morally to act more humbly, walk more humbly upon this earth in order to save it. And this is quite a different and almost a very distant kind of positioning from contemplating the virtues I want to adopt as my character. Who do I want to be? I want to be a person who walks humbly upon this earth. Humility then becomes part of my nature. This is who I am, and consequently these are my actions because of who I am. Not following moral precepts, but I act this way because that is who I am. And so the key questions asked by virtue ethics are, what sort of person do I want to be? What virtues are characteristic of the person I want to be? What actions will cultivate the virtues I want to possess? And finally, what actions will be characteristic of the person I want to be? So Aristotle is making a comeback in modern ethical thinking. I think I see the reason for that. We may have gotten into a bit of trouble by relying solely on the rightness or wrongness of actions and arguing principles to justify what we did. I'm trying to imagine how different the world might be if we concentrated instead on the person I want to be, cultivating a practice to make these distant virtues a part of my character. Greg Smith from Goldman Sachs could no longer justify his actions and sought to become the person he wanted to be. And if we asked Dick Cheney, which virtues would you cultivate to be adopted as part of your character, might he have acted more fairly? On his deathbed, does he not want to reflect on the, wouldn't he rather not reflect on the brutality of his actions, justified ostensibly by doing the greater good? Would he not, in fact, prefer, like all of us, to reflect on the person he actually was during his lifetime, to reflect on the very character of his being? Would not that be the preferred choice? I don't know if we'll ever know for sure, but I'm glad that virtue ethics is once again on the table. And I invite all of you to consider what sort of person do you want to be?